Let them kill us all and we'll stand and watch. Well, brother, that ain't for me. I'll be running and a jumping and a skipping and a bopping when they blow me to smithereens.
Postmortem Studios, role-playing games, and a lot more to die for. Post-mort.com. Hello lovelies, big news. I have my own storefront now, post-mort.com. So if you want to support me, if you want to buy any of my products, my role-playing games, my fiction, anything that I do, that is now the place to go. And if you can't buy whatever you want from there, it does link off, so you can get hard copy books from lulu.com. From the descriptions there, you can get hard copies of the card games, board games from the Game Crafter. From there you can get t-shirts and other apparel and so on there. All no problem, no issue. That is now the place to go. So please update your bookmarks and your brains. So if you want to buy something, buy Grim, go to post-mort.com. Now, I don't intend it to be just for me, and I have some plans and things to try. We'll go into that in a minute, but there are opportunities for you. I also want to take this opportunity to kind of talk about the state of the RPG industry for independent publishers as it kind of stands today. So if you're not interested in that, if you're just someone who wants to buy material, post-mort.com, and I'll see you later. The rest of you, okay, let's talk about my plans and the industry and the issues and the opportunities that I hope to give you. At the moment, the site is all digital downloads, so you'll pay on there by whatever means, PayPal, whatever else, and you'll get a download link where you can get the product. And then it links away for hard copy of board games, card games, books, and so on, and links off for t-shirts, all the rest of that. Eventually, I hope to also offer physical products, not via the print on demand and so on, but perhaps some kind of boutique products of some sort. So things like not just a themed dice set, but a whole gaming kit on theme. I'm waiting on getting prices and so on. So for example, you could have a Flash Gordon or Ming the Merciless sort of styled set where you get a red and black dice tray, red and gold dice, red and gold cards, things like that, so that you have a whole set of everything you need to play, counters, all the rest of it. I'm not sure on the pricing on that kind of thing yet, but I'm planning to look into that and do a few test runs to see if it'll sell, how much it'll sell for, all the rest of it, things like that. So I'm looking to broaden what I do by a fair amount, shall we say. I'm also hoping to sell second-hand books, mostly gaming books, but maybe some other bits and pieces on the site. I've got a bunch of old comics I need to sell off, so yeah, I'm looking to broaden the scope of what I offer on there. I might also offer paid for video courses on game design, on writing games for the role-playing industry, telling you how to get started and so on. And I hope to also bring some of the stock art sales that we do currently over on RPG Now over to this site, but in sets. It's just too much labour for one person to put every single one in individually and get all our back catalogue on there, so I'm hoping to do relatively cheap bundles of stock art that you'll be able to buy to use in your games, in your game design, whatever else. So that should be coming at some point. Not everything is on the site yet. I'm waiting for some clarification on details and things. There shouldn't be a problem, but it's best to be on the safe side, I think, especially during launch when some arsehole is bound to try and cause trouble. Unfortunately, that is the world we live in today. When it comes to you guys, perhaps, I don't exactly know who's watching, if you want to publish a game, or a book, stories, fiction, whatever else, and you're worried by potential backlash or censorship coming from the mob, then I hope to provide a home for you, for that edgier, more interesting material that might perhaps get knocked off somewhere like RPG Now or Amazon or something like that. I want to provide a home and an outlet for that kind of stuff. Now, you are going to be subject to my my tastes, whether I think something is good enough or justified enough. And I'm not exactly doing this out of the kindness of my heart, if you like. I see a profit, frankly, to be made from providing a home for people whose products are like that. Because every time there is censorship, there is a fuss, and there is a certain amount of money to be made on the back of that fuss. So it's not entirely out of the kindness of my own heart, but I do very strongly believe in free speech, free expression, dangerous expression. I can't protect you from payment processors, and I have to protect myself from that kind of financial, fiscal censorship. But if it's something that passes their terms of service but riles up the mob, then I'm pretty much likely to be willing to publish it here. So this can be your home if you want to sell products like that, or just if you've got something that fits my kind of overall ethos, I guess. It doesn't have to be role-playing. It can be fiction, bizarro horror, whatever it is that you do. I want to give you a home, both because it'll profit me and because I just think it's the right thing to do. And I'm still figuring out how much I'm going to charge for that. Most middleman sites seem to charge about a third of the cover price. I'm looking to undercut that to about 20 to 25%, something like that, and that should make it worth my while to do, and it should make it worth your while to send traffic my way, because you'll get more payments that way. So yeah, I hope to be able to turn it into something really good, a community and a stopping point for people who want more interesting material, and I hope to offer more things: video courses, digital downloads, physical products, boutique products, secondhand material. We'll just have to see how it goes. But of course, this is all happening against a backdrop of a very fluid and difficult market, shall we say. So let's finish up by going into that. The opening of Charles Dickens' book A Tale of Two Cities could kind of been made for the way things are in the RPG industry and the broader culture as a whole. It was the best of times, it was the worst of times. It was the age of wisdom, it was the age of foolishness. It was the epoch of belief, it was the epoch of incredulity. It was the season of light, it was the season of darkness. It was the spring of hope, it was the winter of despair. We had everything before us, we had nothing before us. We were all going direct to heaven, we were all going direct the other way. In short, the period was so far like the present period that some of its noisiest authorities insisted on its being received for good or evil in the superlative degree of comparison only. In many ways, we're in a golden age of role-playing games, but that golden age is largely limited to D&D. D&D has never had a higher profile, and that's good in a way, but the D&D community can be quite insular. People who play D&D often only think of D&D and never play anything else, and this is unfortunate. We need more system sluts to maintain a whole industry and keep it going. But there have been emergent new mid-tier companies like Modiphius that are hoovering up every property they can find left, right and centre, and that is a tactic that has been used somewhat successfully in the past by companies like Mongoose and Cubicle 7, but it tends to eventually run out and collapse. Streaming is a big thing now, and that's good in a way for raising the profile of games, allowing people to see how games are run. But the trouble is that these kind of professionally run, effects-laden, shiny, spangly streams of people playing are creating a sense of inadequacy in people that don't have access to all of that. And it's also creating insecurity and questions from people who don't necessarily play or understand the game in the way that it's presented on these streams. So where the RPG culture used to be a lot more granular, people did things their own way, you went from one table to another and pretty much the only thing that was the same were the stats, that's gone away. There's been a kind of homogenization, and we find that paralleled in the creativity of games. The pundit, who tends to put things much more brusquely than I would, says that everywhere is a kind of fantasy Seattle. And to an extent, he's right, unfortunately, much as it pains me to admit it. There is this homogenization, modern outlook on everything, and it's just dull. It used to be that the indie games were where you found a lot of the experimental activity, challenging themes, stuff like that. But indie, as it had before in music and other things, came to have its own meaning that wasn't just independent, that wasn't just small press, that wasn't just experimental. That became the hub of the whole new wave of political correctness, which swept through the role-playing community a couple of years earlier than it did everyone else. So role-playing, much like pornography, is a bit of a canary in the coal mine when it comes to censorship and cultural shifts of that kind. Now, weirdly, we find a lot of the more experimental stuff going on in the old-school Renaissance, and this seems like a paradox because they're harking back to the really early days of role-playing and using variations on the original D&D system, so there isn't a huge amount of system revelation and change and innovation going on, but in the presentation and the character and the execution of rules and settings and so on, that is weirdly where you find a lot of the innovation, though that too has now been tinged by this whole culture war thing and kind of screwed over in a lot of ways. And that's kind of the running theme. Everywhere you turn, everywhere you look, if you're not exactly kowtowing to whatever particular set of extreme beliefs seem to be de rigueur in the Twitterati at that time, you're in for a bad time. And this seems unfair, and this is partly what has driven me to create my own site and to offer it up as a haven to other people who have suffered this kind of mob censorship and so on. See, it doesn't matter to them what you believe, what you think, what your perspective is. Only their perspective on what you have produced it counts, is the only thing that matters. Your intent doesn't. Complete death of the author. So if you write something that incorporates, I would say a racist or transphobic villain, you must be racist or transphobic for some reason because you've written the villain that way. And that's all that matters, their interpretation of what you've done. So that's why I think there is increasingly going to be a need and a demand for people to have their own sites to insulate themselves a bit. Not that there's any true escape because of payment processors and all the rest of it. I don't want to be too doom and gloom because it is a golden age and it's very easy to publish stuff yourself now. There's licenses, there's resources, there's old hands like me who are willing to help you out. In many ways, there's never been a better time to get into the RPG industry. You don't have to be hired by another company. You can just do it yourself, and you can make a few bucks, even doing pretty simple, low-budget stuff. It's possible, and I think you should. But you have to be aware of this broader implication, and either be very careful, or find ways around it and find your own audience. And get people to know and trust you before you step out of line. I don't regret being involved in Gamergate. I still think it was the right thing to do, and I'll still defend it. I think there is increasingly going to be a need and a demand for people to have their own sites to insulate themselves a bit. Not that there's any true escape because of payment processors and all the rest of it. I don't want to be too doom and gloom because it is a golden age, and it's very easy to publish stuff yourself now. There's licenses, there's resources, there's old hands like me who are willing to help you out. In many ways, there's never been a better time to get into the RPG industry. You know, you don't have to be hired by another company. You can just do it yourself, and you can make a few bucks, even doing, you know, pretty simple, low budget stuff. It's possible, and I think you should. But you have to be aware of this broader implication, and either be very careful or find ways around it and find your own audience and get people to know and trust you before you step out of line. I don't regret